Poor Dasarath was in extreme agony, pulled by natural affection on one side, and by the moral obligation to fulfill a pledge on the other. He had fondly hoped that Kaikeyi would relent, and that somehow the conflict of duties would be resolved. But now he saw that this was not to be. But he had still one faint hope, and thought, Ram is in no way bound by my promises and pledges. Strong as he is in people's love and in his peerless prowess, he may disregard my promise and stand on his own rights. But I cannot conceive his doing so, for my slightest wish has always been sacred to him. Yet, if by some chance he did so, it would save the situation. In the confusion and anguish of his heart, the old king consoled himself with such false hopes, forgetting that Ram would never think of disregarding his father's promise, and that filial obedience was a fundamental rule of his life. But the false hopes did not persist long. He felt that his death was near. In this agonizing conflict of duties, death would be a relief and save him from the disruption and sorrows to come. As death drew near, his mind recalled past events. He remembered a great sin committed by him in youth. He felt that he was now reaping what he had then sowed, and thought, I killed the sage's son and brought grief to his aged parents. How could this sin be wiped off, except by my suffering the anguish of losing a dear son? Thus Dasarath resigned himself to his fate as a just retribution for the wrong he had once done. He concluded that he had no alternative but to fulfill his word to his cruel wife, and left the ordering of things entirely to Kaikeyi. Day dawned. The hour fixed for the coronation was approaching. The procession of Vasishtha and his disciples, carrying the golden vessels containing the waters of holy rivers, was coming towards the palace. The great street was decorated and was crowded with eager men and women. They rejoiced to see Vasishtha and his disciples march to the palace with the holy waters and the paraphernalia of installation. As they saw the honey, curds, clarified butter, fried rice, sacred grass, flowers, maidens, elephants, horses, and chariots, the white umbrella, the bull, the horse, and the tiger-skin seat moving to the accompaniment of music from many instruments, the people made loud and jubilant acclamations which filled the air. Vasishtha, approaching the palace gate, saw Sumantra and said to him, Please go in at once and inform the king that the people are waiting, and all preparations are complete. Sumantra approached the king's bedchamber, and chanting the morning hymn, conveyed Vasishtha's message. O king, he said, arise from slumber to the hymn of your charioteer, as the king of the gods does to Matali's waking songs. May all the gods be gracious unto you. The elders, generals, and chief citizens are waiting for your presence. The goddess of night has withdrawn. The day's work awaits your ordering. O king of kings, be pleased to rise. Holy Vasishtha and his men are waiting. At that moment, the king was speechless with agony, but Kaikeyi boldly answered for him and told Sumantra, The king spent the night talking of Ram's coronation and had no sleep, so now he is in a slumber. Go at once and bring Ram. Thus the clever woman sent Sumantra to fetch Ram to convey the king's command. She knew that Dasarath had agreed, but had not the strength to do what had to be done. Hence Kaikeyi resolved that she herself would do what needed to be done. Sumantra went to Ram's palace. Sita and Ram were getting ready for the coronation. Then Sumantra gave to Ram the message that the king and Queen Kaikeyi wanted his presence. Ram hastened to obey. The unexpected delay and these strange goings and comings roused doubts, but no one dared to talk of them. The men concerned hoped that somehow things would turn out right and went on with their allotted work. The streets were brightly decorated. The great hour was approaching, as in the Queen's chamber, strange and sinister events were developing. Why this long delay, the people wondered. Perhaps the preliminary rites are more elaborate than we had thought. The crowds in the street grew bigger and bigger and more impatient. Sumantra accompanied Ram to Kaikeyi's palace, threading the way with difficulty through the crowd. Ram entered the Queen's apartment. As he stepped over the threshold, he started as if he had set his foot upon a snake, for he saw with awe-struck amazement his father lying on the bare floor in anguish. The king evidently had been struck down with some great sorrow. His face was like a blossom wilted in the sun. He touched his father's feet and paid the same filial worship to Kaikeyi. Dasarath uttered in a low voice the name of Ram and stopped. He could speak no more. He could not look straight into the face of Ram. Ram was perplexed and filled with apprehension at the sight of his father lying there, unable to speak, in the grip of some great agony. What it could be, Ram could not even guess. He turned to Kaikeyi and said, "Mother, this is indeed strange. No matter how angry he was, my father would speak sweetly to me. Have I, without knowing it, offended him in any matter? Has some sudden sickness struck him down? Has someone spoken rudely to him? Do tell me what has happened. I can bear the suspense no longer." Bold Kaikeyi seized the chance and said, "The king is angry with no one. There is nothing wrong with his health, but there is something in his mind which he is afraid to tell you. That is all. He is afraid to say it to you, lest you should feel hurt. That is why he is silent. Once upon a time, pleased with me, he offered, and I accepted, the gift of 2 boons. Now, like an uncultured person, the king regrets he did so. Is this worthy of him? Is it not unbecoming of a king to pledge his word and then regret it? You have the power to fulfill his promise, but he fears even to tell you of it and is thinking of violating it. Would it be right if you assure him that he need not be anxious about your attitude and that he should keep his word at all costs? You will give him the needed strength to behave righteously. You must give him the help he needs. Now, I shall tell you what it is, but only after you promise me that you will help the king to fulfill his pledge." Ram, saddened at the thought that he should in any way be the occasion of distress to his father, said to Kaikeyi, "Mother, am I indeed the cause of all this trouble? I do not deserve that you should have any doubts about me. If my father asks me to jump into the fire, I shall not hesitate to do it. If he asks me to drink poison, I shall drink it without hesitation. You know this. You know well enough that at his bidding I would drown myself in the sea. Mother, I give you my solemn promise that I shall fulfill the king's promise to you, and I never break my word." When Ram uttered these words, Kaikeyi rejoiced, for she knew she had conquered. The king, for his part, was in despair, seeing that all escape was now barred. Thereupon the pitiless Kaikeyi uttered these terrible words, "Ram, Your words are worthy of you. What higher duty has a son than helping fulfillment of the word his father has given? Now I shall let you know your father's promise to me. When in the battle with Shambhara, your father was wounded, I rescued and revived him. Your father, in gratitude for having been rescued by me when grievously wounded, gave me 2 boons to be claimed and specified when I chose. I have claimed and specified them now. They are that Bharat should be anointed regent king, and that you should be sent away this very day to the Dundak forest to remain in exile for 14 years. Now you have sworn solemnly to carry out your pledged word. If you find right conduct as hard as your father did, that is another matter. Otherwise, listen to what I say. It is for you now to relinquish the installation and to go out into exile with matted hair and hermit dress, leaving the preparations presently ready to serve for Bharat's installation. When she uttered these cruel words, the king writhed in agony, but Ram heard her undisturbed. Kaikeyi beheld a miracle. There was not the slightest sign of disappointment or sorrow in Ram's face. Smiling, the prince said, "Is that all, mother? Surely the king's promise must be fulfilled. My hair shall be twisted, I shall wear the bark, and I shall go this very day to the forest." Kaikeyi spoke prophetic words when she said Ram's dutifulness would bring him glory undying. That glory will continue as long as the Himalaya mountains stand, and the waters of the Ganges flow, and the ocean waves beat on the solid earth. Ram said to Kaikeyi in unperturbed tones, "I am not in the least annoyed. Would I not be happy to give anything to Bharat? Even if no one asked me, I would cheerfully give him my all. And how can I hold back a moment when my father commands it? But what pains me a little is that father should have entertained any doubt about my willingness. Why should he have hesitated to tell me what he wanted and left it to you to say it to me? Am I not his son, bound to do his behest? What glory or what joy can I look for except to make good his word? How did I deserve it that my father should avert his face from me and refrain from speaking loving words to me? My grievance, if at all, is that he did not send for me straight and give me his command. I shall go to the forest this very day with no regret, so send swift messengers at once to bring Bharat home." The prince's face glowed like a sacrificial fire, bursting into flame as the ghee is poured into it. Kaikeyi felt glad at her apparent success. Like a captive elephant hemmed in on all sides, Dasarath lay in anguish. With needless harshness, Kaikeyi hurried Ram, saying, "Do not wait for the king to speak and prolong the affair." At this Ram said, "Mother, you have not, it seems, known me. I value no pleasure higher than to honor my father's pledge. Let Bharat carry the burden of kingship and look after our aged father. It will indeed give me the greatest joy." Dasarath, silent till now, though listening intently, moaned aloud. Ram touched his feet as well as Kaikeyi's and hurried out of the chamber. Lakshman had been standing outside. He knew what had happened, and with eyes red with anger he followed Ram. On the way, Ram saw the vessels holding the consecrated water for the coronation. He walked round them in worship. With calm majesty he left behind the white umbrella and other royal insignia, and advised the crowds to disperse. The prince, in whom desire had been vanquished, went to the house of Queen Kausalya to give her the news and take her blessings before departing for the forest. What took place in the inner apartments of the palace was not yet known to the townspeople, but Ram, for his part, lost no time in preparing for forest life. He went to Queen Kausalya to receive her blessings before leaving the city. Kausalya said to him again, "How can I stay in Ayodhya after you are gone? It is best that I go with you to the forest." Of course, she knew that her duty was to serve her husband in his old age and share his sorrow in Ayodhya, and yet her mind was now so confused by grief that she did not see things clearly. But Ram would not hear of it, and reminded her of her duty to be with the heart-stricken old king in his sad solitude. She recognized the justice of this counsel. She gave him her benedictions in sweet words, diluted with the salt of broken tears. "Do as your father has decreed, and return in glory," she said. Ram enlivened her with a smile, saying, "The 14 years will pass quickly, and you will see me back." Ram had left Sita and went to the king in answer to the message brought by Sumantra. Sita was expecting Ram to return in a chariot with the royal umbrella, followed by a great retinue. But now she saw Ram return alone, unattended, with none of the royal insignia, and she noted on his face the glow of some fixed resolve. Ram was thinking as he came how he could break to his beloved the news of what his father had decreed. "Something troubles the mind of my lord," thought Sita, "but what can anything matter so long as there is our love?" And then she asked him, "What is the matter? Why do you look so strangely?" Ram told the story briefly, and then added, "Princess, my love, I can well imagine your sorrow at having to part from me and stay here. But you do not require my guidance to do your duty. Be thoughtful of the comfort of the king and the 3 queens, your mothers. Do not expect any better treatment than that given to the other princesses in the palace. And be respectful to Bharat, who will be the ruler, and guard against any offense to his feelings. Your love for me, I trust, will not grow any less during this absence. I shall return from the forest after these 14 years. Till then, do not neglect customary rites and ceremonies. Mother Kausalya in her sorrow will need your attentive care. Bharat and Satrughan are dear to me. You will look upon them as your brothers. Conduct yourself as befits your royal race and your own nature. Avoid praising me, so as not to give possible offense to other good men. I must go to the forest today. Keep your mind steady and calm." When Sita heard this unexpected speech, her love for Ram manifested itself as anger, that he should for a moment conceive that she could consent to part from him and live in comfort in the palace, while he was a homeless wanderer in pathless forests. "A fine speech you have made, O knower of duty. It is to me a strange doctrine, that a wife is diverse from her husband, and that his duty is not hers, and that she has no right to share in it. I can never accept it. I hold that your fortunes are mine, and if Ram has to go to the forest, the command includes Sita also, who is part of him. I shall walk in front of you in the forest ways, and tread the thorns and the hard ground to make them smooth for your feet. Do not think me obstinate. My father and mother have instructed me in my duty. What you tell me is totally opposed to what they have taught me. To go with you, wherever you go, that is my only course. If you must go to the forest today, then today I will go with you. There is no room here for any discussion. Do not think that I cannot bear forest life. With you by my side, it will be a joyous holiday. I shall not be a source of trouble to you either. I shall eat fruits and roots like you, and I shall not lag behind as we walk. I have long wished to go to the woods with you and rejoice in the sight of great mountains and rivers. I shall spend the time most happily among the birds and flowers, bathing in the rivers and doing the daily rites. Away from you, I do not care for a heaven itself. I shall surely die if you leave me behind. I implore you to take me with you. Have pity on me. Do not forsake me now. Beginning in anger, her speech ended in sobs. Ram explained to Sita that life in the forest was not as easy as she thought, emphasizing at great length the difficulties and dangers, and again insisted that she should not think of accompanying him. Sita's eyes filled with tears. Tigers, lions, bears, snakes, none of them will come near me. They will flee from us at the sight of you. The sun, rain, wind, and hunger, and the spikes and thorny shrubs you speak of, I shall endure them all cheerfully. I am not in the least afraid. And on the other hand, you may be certain life will depart from this body if you leave me here and go. When I was in Mithila, the Brahmins and astrologers told my mother that I was destined to live in the forest for a while. Can I fulfill this prediction alone in the forest? Here is the opportunity for me to fulfill it in your company, which will make the forest a garden of delight. For whom is forest life unpleasant? Only to those men and women who have not controlled their senses. You and I can be masters of our senses and miss nothing. I implore you, put me not away from you, for parting from you is more cruel than death. There is a strength in supreme love which defies reason and laughs at death itself. And Ram suffered himself to be persuaded, partly because his love was as great as hers, and every passionate word she spoke found ready lodgment in his heart, and partly because he was confident of his ability to protect her. It was settled that Sita should accompany Ram to the forest. She sent for the poor and gave away all her belongings, and prepared herself for life in the forest. Lakshman also decided to go with his brother and be of service to him in the forest, and Ram had to agree. The three then went to take leave of the aged king. In the streets and on the balconies were crowds of people looking on. Through the windows and from the terraces of mansions, men and women saw Ram, Lakshman, and the princess proceeding on foot, like the poorest in the land. Filled with boundless grief and indignation, the people said to one another, "What kind of a king is this who sends so noble a prince to the forest? And there Sita walks, a princess that should command the service of the royal chariot. Can she bear the heat and the rain of the forest? No, this is monstrous. We shall go then to the forest too. Let us gather up all we have and get away to the forest with these princes. The forest where Ram dwells shall be our Ayodhya. Let these houses here henceforth be deserted, infested with snakes and rats. Let Kaikeyi rule over the ruins of Ayodhya. Wild beasts and vultures of the forest will come to stay here. This will become a forest, and the forest will become Ayodhya." Ram heard people talking thus, but took no notice. At the entrance to Kaikeyi's palace, Ram saw Sumantra seated sorrowfully aside in a corner. Ram tenderly spoke to him. "The three of us have come to meet the king. Sumantra asked permission for us to enter his presence." Sumantra went in accordingly to announce them to the king. What a sight the monarch was! Like the sun in eclipse, like an oven filled all over with ash, like a well gone dry, The king was stretched flat on the floor, his glory gone and his face shrunken and distorted with anguish. Sumantra, his voice trembling with grief and his hands clasped together, said, "The prince waits at the entrance. He seeks audience to take your blessings before he gives away all he has to the Brahmins and starts for the Dandak forest." The king bade Sumantra let the prince in. Ram came and bowed to the king from a distance. As soon as he saw Ram, the king suddenly rose and rushed with outstretched arms to embrace him, but fainted away before reaching his son. Ram and Lakshman tenderly lifted him up and put him on the couch. "My lord," said Ram, "we have come to seek your leave to go to the forest. Sita and Lakshman are also going with me, in spite of all I could do to make them desist. Please give us your benedictions and permission to depart." Dasarath then said, "Ram, I am bound by the boons that I have given to Kaikeyi, but you are not so bound. Why do you not brush me aside and seize the kingdom by force?" That had long been in the king's mind as the best and only solution of this cruel problem, and came out now clearly in words. But Ram said, "I have no desire for kingdom or power, father. May you reign for 1,000 years more. My heart is now set on going to the forest, and I am even now in readiness to start after receiving your blessing. When the 14 years have passed, I shall return and offer obeisances to you." The king's faint hope, it was now clear, must be abandoned. "My son, bring glory to our line of kings. Go, but come back unscathed. May danger flee from your path. Cling to virtue. You are unshakable in resolution. Firm and unchangeable is your will. But do not go away today. Spend but this night here with me." "Let me fill my eyes with the sight of you. You can go away at dawn." Oh, like one handling a live coal deceptively covered with ash, I gave the promise to Kaikeyi, not knowing what was in her mind. I am now helpless and caught in her net. And you say, I shall fulfill my father's promise. I shall not let dishonor blot the name of my father. I shall give up the kingdom and go to the forest. Where in the world can one find a son like unto you? I swear to you, I did not intend this great wrong." Thus piteously spoke the king. It was Dasarath's wish to die without losing, even in his last moments, the respect of Ram. "Father, send for Bharat at once, and fulfill the promise you have given to Mother Kaikeyi. Do not be troubled by the thought that you are doing me a wrong, for I had no desire for the throne, and do not feel it a deprivation to be denied it. Untroubled by grief or doubt, have Bharat crowned, and give him your blessings. Cast all grief aside, shed no tears. Can the ocean dry up? So may you too not lose your balance ever, great Father. My sole wish is to make good the word you gave. If I get all the wealth of the world, but falsify your word, what joy would that be to me? I shall spend my time happily in the forest. Where but in the forest can one find beauty or joy? Father, you are my God. I take it that it is God that sends me to the forest. When the 14 years are over, you will see me again, so do not grieve. What profits it that I stay here a night longer and go tomorrow? Time is made up of a succession of tomorrows, and one day is just like another. Inevitable sorrows do not become joys by postponement. Well then, send for the commanders, said the king to Sumantra, and order them to get ready the chariots, elephants, horses, and foot soldiers to go with Ram to the forest. And along with the army, send all the necessary stores for Ram to live with the rishis of the forest. Let there be nothing wanting in men, money, or things. Poor Dasarath imagined that he could make Ram's exile to the forest something like a royal tour, affording a pleasant change from routine. As he spoke, Kaikeyi's face paled with anger. She glowered at the king, and in a voice tremulous with scornful wrath, she said sarcastically, "A good and generous monarch, surely. You will give Bharat this kingdom after squeezing out of it all the good it holds, as one might offer in mockery an empty well to a man dying of thirst. What pleasure or glory will my son have in ruling a deserted state?" Dasarath groaned in helpless shame and marveled at a cruelty that could stab a man already crushed under an intolerable burden. Angry words rose from the mouths of those around, for even the courtiers found this open heartlessness more than they could suffer in silence. But Ram put an end to all recriminations by saying he would not agree to take paraphernalia incongruous with what was intended in forest life. "Honored Lord," he said, "what use have I, who am departing to the forest to live on what nature yields, for an army or the glittering train of a royal pageant? After gladly renouncing the throne, what use have I for its shackles? Father, I have cheerfully relinquished my claim to the kingdom in favor of Bharat and his mother, and with it all the incidents of royalty. For my 14 years of forest life, I require nothing but bark garments, such as sages wear, and simple necessities of forest life, such as spades and baskets." Hardly had Ram spoken these words, when the unabashed Kaikeyi hastened to produce the forest dress she had kept ready, and gave it herself, without a blush, to Ram. Then and there Ram dressed himself in bark, and in these garments he shone like a sage. Lakshman also changed into bark dress, while Dasarath watched all this in helpless anguish. Then Kaikeyi brought a bark dress for Sita. She received it and stood bewildered, for she had never worn such garments before, and did not know how to change into them. Approaching Ram, who stood there resplendent with divine effulgence, Sita said shyly, "Tell me, how does one put this bark on?" As Ram took up the bark dress and, wrapping it over Sita's silk, made a knot over her shoulder, the ladies in waiting wailed aloud, and Dasarath again fainted. When he regained consciousness, he loudly reviled Kaikeyi, but she only smiled scornfully. She surely was not responsible for Sita going to the forest. The princess sought her own pleasure by going to the forest with her husband, and would not be dissuaded. Lowering his eyes as he was leaving, Ram said, "Father, I leave behind my mother Kausalya, a blameless and tender-hearted lady, bereft of her son in her old age. This sudden fate is as bitter to her as death, but she consents to live only for your sake, to share your sorrow and console you. She is incapable of harboring an unkind thought towards anyone, and she has never before felt the pang of such poignant parting. Please be kind to her when I am no longer here, and when I return after my long exile in the hope of putting my head on her feet, let me not hear that she has died of sorrow." Thus Ram spoke, unable to bear the thought of his mother's grief. As Ram went out speaking thus, Dasarath could not endure the sight, and covered his face with his hands. After Ram left his father's presence with these words, the stricken king lay prostrated in speechless sorrow, and it was some time before he could muster his faculties sufficiently even to think. When he recovered some strength, he muttered half unconsciously, "Surely I must in a previous birth have inflicted hideous suffering to loving hearts. I must have torn calves from their mothers, children from their parents, husbands from their wives. How else could I suffer thus? And death does not come when we want it, and I have to endure the torture of always having before my mind's eye my godlike son, deprived of his birthright and forced into the bark garments of a hermit. O life, how bitterly you cling to those who would be rid of you. Ram has gone into exile, and yet I do not die. O Ram, 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 have you gone?" A little later, his mind clearer, the king said, "Sumantra, get ready the chariot and take my sons and Sita to the frontier of the kingdom." Lakshman touched the feet of his mother Sumitra and uttered the single word, "Mother." She embraced him, kissed his head, and said, "Your devotion to your brother has filled your mother's heart with pride and joy. It is your duty, child, to guard and serve Ram. Always stand in vigilant watch by Ram's side in the forest. Your elder brother is to you both preceptor and king. This is the dharma or duty of our race. Go with my blessing, Lakshman. In the forest, regard Ram as your father, and look upon Sita as your mother, and the forest will be to you as Ayodhya. Go cheerfully, my dear son, and God bless you." Sumantra then said, "Ascend the chariot, O prince. Tell me where I am to drive, for the 14-year period has begun." Sita mounted the chariot cheerfully. Kausalya had made up for her a packet of personal requirements. The shields, bows and arrows, and other weapons of the two brothers, together with pickaxes and baskets, were placed in the chariot. Ram and Lakshman ascended the chariot, and Sumantra drove it forward. The crowds in the street cried to the charioteer, "Go slow, go slow! Let us have a look at Ram's face!" Alas, alas, who could send such children to the forest? How could their mothers endure the sorrow and survive? Look at Sita's face. She is indeed blessed, and Lakshman is happy to have such a brother to whom he can give devoted service. He is indeed a hero and a knower of duty. So the people of the city talked among themselves as they followed the chariot, and their grief swelled like a flood. Ram was urging the good charioteer, "Faster, faster!" But the people were saying, "Slow, slow!" And the crowd became bigger and bigger. Sumantra managed somehow to take the chariot out of the grieving town. The king stepped out of Kaikeyi's apartment and looked at the departing chariot. He stood there a long time, watching the cloud of dust, as though he saw in it the beloved form of Ram. When this went out of sight, he fell down moaning. Kausalya and Kaikeyi sat on either side. "Do not touch me," said Dasarath to Kaikeyi. "I hate the sight of you, sinful woman. Everything is at an end between you and me. I renounce you here and now. If Bharat agrees to your arrangements and accepts the kingdom, he need not perform my funeral ceremonies. Even if he did, my departed spirit would reject his offering of waters. How can Ram live in the forest? Will he sleep on the bare ground with a stone or a log for a pillow? Will he eat fruits and berries?" Thus the king went on, lamenting helplessly. Sometimes he would turn to Kaikeyi and say, "May you be happy in your success. Long may you live, a happy widow." Heartbroken and empty, like one returning home from the cremation ground, he entered Kaikeyi's apartment by force of habit. Then suddenly he said, "No, not here. I will go to the dwelling of Kausalya." And so he did, and there he lay, waiting for his end. At midnight he said, "Kausalya, are you there? Touch me with your hand. My sight is gone with Ram." Poor Kausalya did her best to comfort the king. But what comfort was there in her wounded heart to give? For as the slow, sorrow-laden hours crawled, the cold night seemed to her a devouring flame, and the gentle moon fierce as the noonday sun. To her thus sorrowing, Sumitra said, "Sister, you have heard the scriptures and know your duty. Why should you grieve like this? It is your office to put courage in others, so you should not lose heart yourself. Ram has gone to the forest for guarding the king's honor. You are indeed blessed among women, for you are the mother of a hero who has scorned a kingdom and preferred to uphold his father's honor. Why should you grieve for a son who fulfills a difficult duty to perfection? We should not feel sorry for one who walks in the path of his ancestors and wins undying fame. I am proud that Lakshman has accompanied Ram. Sita, though knowing well the hardships she has to face, has also gone with her husband. Ram's glory will shine like an undying lamp. This is no occasion for grief. His purity and his virtue shall be a shield and armor to them. He is so great and holy that the sun's rays falling on him will not burn him, and the wind that blows will caress him with its coolness. His pure frame, as he sleeps at night, will be embraced and protected by the moonbeams, as an infant is by its loving mother. Shed all anxiety over your heroic son. No foe can encounter him and escape with life. Our Ram is endowed with all auspicious qualities. Your hero son will surely return to Ayodhya and ascend the throne. The Lord of the world, and no other, is Ram. Sita is with him, and Sita is no other than the goddess of prosperity, Lakshmi. Ram will return, and ascending the throne, will fill with delight the kingdom, which now laments his exile. You saw the grief of the citizens as they watched his departure. My heroic son, the devoted Lakshman, armed with bow and sword, has gone with him to guard his person. No harm, no danger can approach Ram. You will see with your own eyes Ram returning after fulfillment of his vow. Believe me, Ram will return, beautiful like the full moon, and bow to your feet with joy and devotion. You will then shed tears not of grief, but of joy. Dear Kausalya, give up your grief. You will see the three of them returning. You should console and encourage the other women in the palace, and not stand broken-hearted yourself. Who else in this world stands firm by duty like Ram? Is this a cause for grief? No. Be proud of your son, Kausalya. Listening to Sumitra's words, Kausalya was somewhat consoled. The people of the city followed Ram's chariot in a huge crowd. They tried to stop the chariot, shouting, "Do not go to the forest! Return to the city!" But Ram replied, "I am going to the forest to uphold my father's word. There is no place for sorrow here, and you should not seek to hinder me." But the people would not listen to him, and went in crowds after him, shouting wildly, "Do not go to the forest! Do not go to the forest!" Ram stopped the chariot and addressed them with his eyes full of love for them. "Citizens of Ayodhya, I know the love you bear for me, but you will show it best by transferring it on my behalf and at my behest to my beloved brother Bharat. Nothing else will please me more. Bharat is good and noble, has all royal qualities, and is fully worthy of love. So conduct yourselves as to please him. Young in years, he is old in wisdom, and his heart is at once heroic and tender. He has the strength to protect you. He is your king, and you owe him loyalty and affection." "I am going to the forest to fulfill my father's word, and the king has appointed Bharat as regent. He is in every way fitted for that position. You and I alike should obey the king's words. You should go back and try to mitigate the sorrow of my father at parting from me." Thus Ram spoke to them in kindly tones. But they loved him all the more because of this, and would not be consoled. Some Brahmins, old in years and excellent in virtue, looking at the chariot, wept and cried, "Why, O horses, do you carry our Ram into the forest? We have heard it said that horses are sharp of hearing. Listen to us then, and bring back our Ram." Hearing these words of yearning from old Brahmins, Ram stopped the chariot. The three descended from it and went forward walking. The common people, leading citizens and wise elders, why even the birds on wings tried to prevent Ram from going to the forest. The river Tamasa seemed to conspire with them, for now it flowed across his path. The chariot stopped on the river bank. Sumantra unyoked and watered the horses, and let them loose to graze. Ram said, "Lakshman, this is the first night of our forest life. Let us spend it on the bank of this holy river. Life in the forest holds no hardship, as you and I know. Look, the birds, the animals, and even the trees seem to sympathize with us. The only pain is when we think of the grief of our parents in Ayodhya, though I feel reassured as I think of Bharat's nobility and goodness. He will assuredly tend our parents with true affection. Sumantra, go look after the horses." Then Ram offered the evening prayers by the river and said, "Let us fast on this first night of our forest life, Lakshman. Your presence by my side rids me of all care." Lakshman spread some grass on the ground for Ram and Sita to sleep on, but he himself spent the night in vigil, talking with Sumantra. Long before dawn, Ram rose from sleep and told Sumantra, "The citizens who have followed us, fatigued by their long journey, are fast asleep. I am deeply moved by their affection, but I cannot permit their love to force me to go back. Let us therefore move on now, while they are yet asleep." The horses were harnessed, and the chariot slowly crossed the river. Standing on the southern bank, Ram told Sumantra, "If you take the chariot to the other shore, where the people are asleep, and drive it for a little distance towards Ayodhya, and then bring it back to this side, we can proceed on our journey before they wake up. They will then see the track of the chariot going towards the city, and thinking that we have returned home, may themselves go back. Unless you do this, the crowd will go on following us." Sumantra did this, and when the chariot returned, the three got into it again and proceeded southwards. The citizens who had slept on the bank of the Tamasa woke up in the morning and looked round. They were surprised to see that Ram and the chariot had disappeared. They followed the track of the chariot wheels, but were disappointed to find that it was lost in the main road to the capital. They returned home to their own houses and sought satisfaction in reviling Kaikeyi. Without Ram, the city was bereft of beauty and wrapped in gloom. Sumantra and the princes had crossed the Tamasa long before dawn and traveled far into the forest. Crossing several streams, they approached the southern boundary of the Koshala country. Conversing on many matters, they went forward. When they reached the southern boundary of the kingdom, Ram stopped the chariot and, facing north towards Ayodhya, bent his head in a prayer, saying, "O jewel among cities, O ancient capital of the Ikshvakus, shall I, finishing my penance in the forest, live to see my father and mother and you? Oh, please grant me that supreme joy." The chariot reached the bank of the Ganges. They proceeded along the bank, admiring the beauty of the river. Finding a spot of surpassing charm, Ram said, "We shall spend the night here." Untying the horses, they sat under a tree. Guha, the chief of the region, having learned already from his men that Ram would be coming there, came forward with his retinue to greet Ram and Lakshman. He had unbounded love for the royal family and for Ram. Being the chieftain of the tribes who dwelt on the banks of the Ganges, he was a man of great prestige and power. Ram and Lakshman rose to greet Guha, even while the latter was still at some distance from them. Guha welcomed them with a hearty embrace, saying, "Regard this land as your own. This place is as much yours as is Ayodhya. Who can hope to have a guest like you? It is indeed my good fortune." Guha had prepared a lavish entertainment. He said, "Feel perfectly at home and happy in my kingdom. You may spend all the 14 years with us here. You will not lack anything, I assure you. Looking after you will be a pleasure and a privilege to me. Be gracious enough to accept my hospitality." Warmly embracing Guha again, Ram said, "Brother, I know how deep is your love for me. Your wish is itself as good as hospitality rendered. But I am bound by my vows, and must refuse anything more. I have come to dwell in the forest, and not to enjoy life as a chieftain's guest. These horses are my dear father's favorites. Please feed them well. We shall be content with simple food and rest for the night." They lay under the tree for the night. Guha and Lakshman kept awake, conversing with Sumantra. Guha said to Lakshman, "Brother, do go and rest. There is a bed made ready for you. My men will keep careful watch. None dare do anything in the forest unknown to me. Have no anxiety regarding Ram. Please go and sleep." But Lakshman replied, "How can I sleep, Guha? Here, lying on the bare ground, is Sita, daughter of the great Janak and daughter-in-law of the great Dasarath. The great Lord himself, who could subdue the three worlds, lies stretched on the grass. How can I, seeing this, sleep? I wonder how Ayodhya is bearing it. The queen's apartments must be loud with wailing. I even doubt if at this moment Kausalya and my mother are alive. My father indeed found strength somehow to say to Ram, 'Go to the forest,' but I doubt if he has strength enough left to survive Ram's actual departure. And if he has passed away, our mothers too will have given up their lives. And here we are, deprived even of the privilege of doing the last rites to the dead. In any case, it is hardly possible that our father and mothers will be alive to greet us when we return to Ayodhya after our term in the forest." Thus spoke Lakshman in sorrow. Guha was in tears. The night was spent in such sad conversation. Early next morning, Ram told Lakshman, "We must now cross the river. Ask Guha to make ready a boat big enough for crossing this broad river." Guha ordered his men to get this done and informed Ram. Sumantra bowed low and stood before Ram, seeking his further commands. Ram understood Sumantra's unspoken grief, and, laying his hand on Sumantra's shoulders, said, "Sumantra, return to Ayodhya with all speed, and be at the side of the king. Your duty is now to look after him." "O Ram, righteousness, learning, and culture seem to be of no value. You and your brother and Sita are going to live in the forest. What is going to be our lot? How are we going to fare under Kaikeyi's rule?" He now wept like a child. Wiping the tears from Sumantra's eyes, Ram said, "Our family has known no nobler friend than you. It will be your task to console my father. His heart is riven by grief. Whatever his commands, carry them out dutifully. Do not ask yourself whether he wants a thing for himself or with a view to pleasing Kaikeyi. Avoid giving him any pain of mind, and have no anxiety about us. You should say this on my behalf to my aged father, who is stricken with a grief he never knew before. Clasp his feet as you have seen me do, and assure him from me that none of us, not I, nor Lakshman, nor Sita, feel injured or sorry at having been sent away from Ayodhya. We look forward to 14 years of forest life, which will speed on happy wings, and then surely we shall return to his feet for blessings. Give our love to my mother Kausalya, and tell her that, protected by her blessings, we are well. And give a similar message to my stepmothers, especially to Kaikeyi, lest she should think we have parted in anger. Tell my father that it is my earnest prayer that he should hasten with the installation of Bharat, so that he may be a comfort to him in our absence." But Sumantra, unable to restrain his grief, burst out, "How am I to return? And with what words can I give comfort?" And when he looked at the empty chariot, he wept and said, "How shall I drive this chariot that stands desolate without you?" Once again Ram spoke words of comfort and courage to Sumantra, and urged on him the duty of patience, and sent him home. Guha, said Ram, I could indeed spend 14 years in your kingdom as you desire. But would that be fulfilling my vow? I have left Ayodhya to fulfill my father's pledge. I must therefore lead the life of an ascetic. I must not touch dishes daintily cooked and served. We have to live only on fruits, roots, seeds, and vegetables. Comforting Guha thus, the brothers got their locks matted with the milk of the banyan tree. They helped Sita into the boat, and then got into it themselves. Guha bade the boatmen to row it across. The boatmen took them quickly across the river. At midstream, Sita offered a prayer to the goddess of the river. O goddess, help us to fulfill our vow, and return safe to our homeland. They talked as they went on. They reached the farther bank of the Ganges, and there for the first time the three stood alone, unattended by friends. Lakshman, you are my sole armed guard now, said Ram. You will go first. Sita will follow, and I shall walk behind you both. We must save Sita as far as possible from the hardship of forest life. Hereafter there will be none to keep us company, and no fun or amusement. Ram's thoughts went to his mother Kausalya. Lakshman, he said, should you not go back to Ayodhya and look after Mother Kausalya and Sumitra? I shall manage my forest days somehow. But Lakshman replied, forgive me, brother, but I am not going back to Ayodhya. Ram indeed expected no other answer. While Ram was plunged in thinking of the mothers left behind, Lakshman ministered to him with loving words of courage and hope. They spent the night under a banyan tree, and left early next morning for Sage Bharadwaj's ashram, which they reached at sunset. Partaking of the hospitality of the sage, they asked him to tell where they could spend the years quietly in the forest. He advised them to go to the Chitrakoot hill,